Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. I'm excited to be joined by Jim Dale, founder and senior consultant at the British Weather Services, and he'll be presenting on whether or not the personal and commercial impacts of weather and climate. So in a moment I'll pass over to Jim to start the webinar, but before I do I'd just like to let everyone know that this session will have a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to type them into the chat or question tab, and we'll hopefully be able to answer all of those at the end. For any unanswered questions, Jim has kindly agreed to follow up following the webinar, and he'll be in touch this week or next week. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Jim, who'll be able to begin the session. So over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Paul. There we go. Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, depending on obviously where you're viewing in from. It's a pleasure to be here. Just so you know, I'm used to doing seminars as opposed to webinars. So this is my first webinar, believe it or not, in COVID time, which is a little bit unusual. But normally I've got an audience in front of me that I can interact with. I recognize you guys out there, guys and girls out there, cannot interact at this stage anyway, up to the point of Q&As at the end. So what I want to be able to do in this particular webinar is give you what I've learned over the last 40 odd years in this business, the business of weather and climate impact, simply because it is so huge and diverse, and probably arguably very underplayed in terms of business per se. It does span, give or take, 70–75% of businesses. In some shape or form, those businesses are impacted by, and probably increasingly so, by weather or climate, which is why I guess I'm sitting here today talking to a business-like audience that you people can take away. There has to be an end game here, and you know, I believe that I learn all the time. I learn every single day in my own vocation in what I do. I'm going to share that with you, some of that with you. We're not going to get that much time to be able to do it all, because it is 40 years. 40 years into, roughly speaking, 40 minutes is a tough little task. But I want to, if you like, expand your mind, use your imagination, where the wheres, whys, and whens we can get involved with weather, where you might take this at the end of the day. You may go into a business that is very, very weather orientated, that the weather impacts a great deal, where you have to have your fingers on the pulse. That's going to be extremely important if you do that. But you might also go into a business that perhaps you don't think is. But in actual fact, when you actually get there and start doing so, you'll realize, you'll come to realize how much the weather does impact upon you. And of course, there's the older sister there, climate and climate change, that's progressively starting to become not just a political debate, but an everyday debate in terms of our own mankind's survival, which we will obviously cover. Now, I'm going to take you through. There'll be a video that will come up before too long, which I hope will inspire you to a certain degree in terms of the areas that I actually work in or have worked in. Many of them are directly weather sensitive. Some of them you'll be surprised about. But what these pictures and the song behind it, by the way, which is a climate change song by Aurora, these particular viewings that you will see all should instigate something about either my own life involved with weather, and or where the weather and climate get involved. But before I actually get to there, I want to take you to the second screen. Now, hopefully you'll have seen this on your intro from Paul, the stuff you'd have got through email. I just want you to read that in your own time, because this is if you like, this is the start of the book that I've written, Whether or Not, which is obviously the subject to this particular presentation. But it actually sort of describes why I've actually written this book, how it might involve you into the future in terms of where you may go. So just spend a second or two looking at that and see what you feel and what it might bring to mind as you go forward in your own careers, or even in your personal life, which I neglected to mention, but your personal life will also be involved in weather and climate impact.
Just a quick one, Jim. You just need to put your presentation into the slideshow.
Yeah,
mode.
will do. I can do that now.
Perfect.
We
Excellent.
all got that? Okay. And you see the bottom part of that, understand, act and prosper, or do nothing and fade to grey. I rather feel that that encapsulates many businesses that are out there in the world today. Not every single country. I think the United States are pretty good at acting where they're weather, the businesses particularly. So that's quite important in terms of saying that one of the reasons for this is that many businesses do not act and prosper. They do nothing. And many of them sadly do fade to grey, and there's been many that have fallen to grey simply because of the fact they've done absolutely nothing. So that's why I say it's important. So we're now going to go to a video. Paul's going to mute me for a few seconds while I play this. Enjoy it. It lasts about 3 minutes or so, and hopefully it'll inspire you, or at least put some suggestions in your mind about the areas of weather impact, climate impact, and where you might go into the future. Here we go. And that completes the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in the song at all, this is as I mentioned before, it's a climate change song by Aurora. It's called The Seed. Very powerful. It is listed in the book because I do cover music and the arts and filmmaking, which we'll cover in a second or two. I wanted to choose that because I wanted to make it apt, because it's obviously very important as far going forward as far as climate is concerned. If you get a chance to look at the video itself, please do so. It is a very powerful piece. So what we're going to do now, I think you can see a split screen now of me and me. I want to take you through each of these stages, the areas that I work in, the areas that you may work in or may work into the future, one by one. Now, some of these I'll stay on for some time, some of them I'll skip quite quickly. It kind of takes the book chapter by chapter, if you like, in terms of introducing it. So the first one is me. Why me? Why am I speaking to you? Why have I got the privilege? Why has Paul invited me? Why did I write the book? I wrote the book simply because I wanted to get across the importance and validity of weather and climate in all our lives, bar none, everybody, everything. And it was so manifest, I really wanted to get it out there. So it took me 6 months to write. I really enjoyed writing it. Some of it was a little bit of a plod, trying to get the facts and figures together. But actually, the book itself is quite an easy read. It's about a 2.5 hour read. And the first chapter is about me, and I go back to my childhood, looking at thunderstorms and enjoying it and saying that the weather had got into my bones. And so it was a kind of hobby, if you like, to begin with, and that's a good place to be. Maybe I should have been a footballer, or I enjoyed football and rugby. Never got that far in both of those, although I became a coach later, football coach later in life. So I got second best, and I got into the weather. Now, only as a hobby to begin with. When I joined the Royal Navy, the British Royal Navy, I didn't join as a meteorologist. I couldn't, and you couldn't at the time. But they had a meteorological arm, and after 2 years as a caterer, I set myself up and got into the class, the climate and oceanographic arm of the Royal Navy in Cornwall. Sat there for a year, much as you guys, many of you guys probably do. Did the examinations and came out as a meteorological observer, which then took me around the world to some fantastic places, observing the weather, which is the start of everything. It's the start of everything. And if you can still see me there, it's the bit that's suggesting, this is extremely important. I may have mentioned this word already, feel the pulse. Feel the pulse, because feeling the pulse means you're looking at what's going on around you. It means you're keeping ahead, one step ahead, you're knowing what's going on. And as an observer in the Navy, that was extremely important, answerable to the captain and to helicopter crews down into the South Atlantic at the time of the Falklands. What a fantastic place. I'll just mention this, if everybody gets the chance, South Georgia is a stupendous place of topography and meteorology. And the book goes into it to a large degree, what happened down there. Also, to a certain degree, which we'll cover it in due course, I went down there as a serviceman, so there was an element of war and battle involved in that, and meteorology is very important in that as well. So I feel after I founded British Weather Services in 1987 and travelled there from that point to this, I kind of gone from pillar to post in terms of all the vocations that you might think. Some of them crazy ones, some of them that you wouldn't expect, and some of them right up where you would expect, I guess. So now we're going to go through the areas that I feel, let's just say, a little bit more in your basket, although this one probably isn't, because we've got to take a step backwards, first of all, to think about weather and climate of the past. Because it's not like we've landed on this earth now with, you know, modern man, and suddenly climate and weather are something that we're all talking about, and you know, it's been talked about for a long time and acted upon. In fact, these guys here, they would have been, weather to them would have been the biggest thing, bar nothing, as it should be to us to a large degree. Okay, we're living in COVID times. COVID has taken the #1 mantle. Everything's been affected by it. We accept that entirely. But if we take COVID out of the equation, then weather and climate are the biggest impactors in business life and your own personal life by none. And that's why it's so important that we get this across. So these guys would have basically lived and died with weather. What they hunted, what they grew when they became farmers and gatherers, all of that would have been dependent on climate and on weather. And I think we know through the ages, and I list in the book many different column tribes that perished because of, or had to move because of, certain elements of weather. So that climate change has always been a factor, not just in mankind, but also before then in go back to the dinosaur world. You saw a picture of the dinosaurs on the slide on the video. You know, arguably, yeah, they probably hit with a meteorite and then volcanic activity, but climate change is the thing that carried on, or was caused by a lot of that, and that probably caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. It wasn't them, it was times before that was the case. And as I say, the book goes into it quite neatly in terms of explaining why weather impact and climate impacts are nothing new, and there to be survived. Now, we're now moving on to where we are now in the modern times, if you like, but not just the modern times. Again, you only have to go back a few hundred years. Farming, agriculture and fishing, these three areas, you could say these are the top of the pyramid, if you like, the top of the iceberg as far as weather is concerned, and the merits of it and the importance of it in terms of our daily bread. Farmers, they are probably second to ourselves in terms of being meteorologists, amateur meteorologists. They're pretty good at it. You know, even though a lot of our business is in fact talking to farmers, we get a lot of business from Ireland, where farmers are acutely aware of weather peril, and they're needing to know, not just on a daily basis, what's happening the next week or the next couple of weeks. So it's so important to them for their crop rotation or their livelihoods per se, whether or not they actually gather in the hay, or whether or not they have a bad year. I think we all know that. And the outcome of that, the outcome of the wrong type of weather in the wrong season at the wrong time, is the fact that prices go up in the shops. So this isn't just them, if you like. It's also you. It's also what you see in your supermarkets, etc., when their livelihoods, you know, really progress to the point of you going to a shop and buying the product or whatever. You just found it's gone up by 10% simply because the weather wasn't on side. Or if the weather's on side, then certainly it can be such that you get, for example, commodity prices in shops, commodities such as cocoa, coffee, wheat. All of these are traded. We might talk about this a little bit later when we get into financial trading, but it's extremely important that you realize that a lot of the movements in these commodities are caused by weather and climate, and those movements, if you like, transpire at the end of the day to the shops. So moving on, that's a coronavirus vaccine, I believe. It doesn't have to be. This is all about health and well-being. So this is kind of it's a personal one, but it's also a business one, because it starts when you open the curtains or the blinds in the morning. Now I'm sitting here in a drizzly eye Wickham, southern England. It's a lot worse further north. But I'm going to say to you, your mood when you open the curtains or blinds in the morning, you're straight away, that sets you up. That sets you up for how you might actually act on that particular day. It's that persuasive, it's that invasive, that maybe you eat a certain different thing, or you wear a certain different thing, and you act in a different way. You take a different form of transport. All of this is guided by whether you've got a bit of blue sky out there, a bit of grey, drizzle, hard rain, strong winds, whatever it's doing. You then should be equipping yourself, feeling the pulse in order to equip yourself more for the day ahead. And by the way, it isn't just a physical thing, it's a mental thing. Mental things. I mentioned about 3 colors that are so important as far as your welfare is concerned. The 3 colors being, and you wouldn't be surprised by this, but the last picture about prehistoric men and others, being yellow, representing the sun, sunshine, green representing foliage, growth, and sky blue. Sky blue being that feel-good factor you get when you open the blinds and curtains and you see the blue sky. If you live in Las Vegas, of course, it's a bit different. They've got blue skies all the time, and those sort of places, they don't want a bit of cloud doesn't do any harm. But this is more for the temperate areas where the weather comes and goes, and you're looking for that day where it's sparkling blue. You can get out and express yourself. So those three colours, in terms of your mental state, are very important. And of course, now in coronavirus time, with people mainly stuck indoors, or at least stuck in situations where they perhaps not prefer to be, the weather is a savior and can be. Going backwards a little bit, or even sideways, the weather and climate responsible for many, many different types of peril, illnesses. You know, you can go all the way through them. So the link between physical illnesses, mental illness is extremely strong and governed by weather. I think there was a picture of a mosquito or whatever. You know that malaria is caused by certain or caused in certain types of climate. Now there's talk about obviously climate change and the movement of mosquitoes into more of a northerly sort of zone. Who's to say? We didn't guess coronavirus. We didn't guess it. And coronavirus in itself, there are weather elements in there talking about UV rays, UV light affecting the way that coronavirus might perish out there. Also, the fact you get into fresh air, it's better than being in a confined. So the weather has a kind of connotation in terms of even this. So health and well-being, if you start with that, then you start with your own sort of domain, if you like. It will set you up for the day. You just got to appreciate that, how that will. If you're on a bad day, let me put it this way, get yourself outside on a blue sky day, feel it, breathe it, because it will make you feel better. There are other things as well, like an odd cup of coffee or something that might do the same thing, but a blue sky and a bit of sunshine can work wonders. And so that's why health and well-being are extremely important in terms of this particular subject. Moving on, we arrive in the supermarket because really it's the second most important thing to health and well-being. It's part of the same equation. It's what we eat, what we drink. It's not just about drinks and food, it's also about clothing as well. But let's just stick on the drinks and what have you. When you walk down these aisles, when you go into your shop, I'll say something to you. You are shopping mostly, unless it's Christmas or you're going to a wedding and you're buying for this or that, something that's a bit obscure, then you're buying for the moment. You're buying for the moment you're in. How you feel is how you buy. Have a look the next time, your own basket, your own trolley, what you're filling it up with and why. Okay, and I'll bet you what you like. Some of that is governed by what's going on externally with the weather, how you're feeling at the time. And your basket will represent that. Have a look at somebody else's and you'll see the same sort of thing. It tends to be the dark and cold and wintry type weather that your basket tends to fill with more of the comfort foods, more of the things that you think are going to comfort you, but you end up eating too much, a lot of calories involved and all the rest of it. And that goes back in history as well, in terms of people filling themselves up for the, during a winter period or just ahead of the winter period and getting themselves fat, overweight, so they could get themselves through the winter. Well, it's not too different now, and sitting in COVID time, it's not too different again. In other words, we're penned in and that's a comfort food. So in a funny old way, it's come around. But this kind of area of food and drink and retail per se is absolutely fundamentally driven by weather and climate on a daily basis. And supermarkets do take weather information. Know that. I'm not sure that they use it necessarily to the degree that they should do. Unless I'm mistaken, I feel many of these companies that we can talk about into the future should be actually employing meteorologists. If any of you are burdened wanting to be a meteorologist in any shape or form, and that's your direction of travel, then it might not be that you work at the Met Office or British Weather Services or anywhere else for that matter. You might actually end up working for these sort of guys sitting in their area, because more of these guys, more of these businesses should be employing frontline meteorologists per se. It's kind of going back into the old style where they used to sort of, look at the sky and have a guess. That's rubbish, and it hasn't moved on much. Okay, apps have come. I've got a feeling about apps, they're not that great, to be honest with you. They'll give you a picture and that's about it. They'll steer you wrong. So not all the time. It can be useful as a quick guide, but nothing more than that. People in these sort of businesses at the sharp end really need a little bit more than that to carry the business forward. So we're moving on, and very close to retail. I neglected to mention clothing, but it's of the same kind of area as food, and you dress in the same way. But advertising and marketing, I mentioned it. I mentioned the old feel the pulse thing. So feeling the pulse, ensuring that you're not missing the train as far as weather is concerned and weather changes are concerned. There's something else that's important. It's called capture the moment. So if you're in, and especially for these guys, advertising and marketing, so the weather's changing or it might change, you've got to get ahead. You've got to get ahead of the crowd. If you press the buttons, the advertising and marketing buttons of your particular weather sensitive business or product, you're going to miss the boat. Your competitors will get ahead of you. So if you're feeling the pulse and capturing the moment, you'll be well in advance and you'll be first out of the gates, if you like. And that will give you a massive advantage if you put in your weather sensitive product or service ahead of everybody else's. I can't impress upon you how important this is, because let's face it, most of the products and services that we use in some shape or form are advertised or marketed in some shape. So this is something, and it's a bit strange because I've been to marketing firms. I've been to a massive one. I won't mention who they are, but they were clueless, absolutely clueless. And I'm talking right across the board, and some of the subjects we're going to cover about how weather could be used to emphasize and enhance their product or whatever they were putting out at the time. And it's so huge. And this timing element of it, if you know what's coming, if you've got good quality information, and if you are based in an advertising or marketing environment, certainly you should have your fingers on the pulse so that you can be the one that knows you can press the button in 3 or 4 or 5 days time, know that the heat wave is coming, know that the blizzard and the frost is about to end, so you can go into a different sphere. That's why marketing and advertising in this kind of arena should be picking up the baton and running with it. And sadly, my experience over the last 40 years, and particularly the last 10 years, where weather information has become much more accessible, they don't. Most of them are sheep, and I say that very openly. They'll be late on the scene. It pays to be first on the scene. Of course, then if you're in marketing and advertising, you're also allied to the TV, radio stations, and newspapers, this type of media area. So you could be working in those areas, pressing the same kind of buttons if you've got the fingers on the pulse. Moving on. Now, these are all British pounds and £50 and what have you. If you've got any of these, it doesn't so much matter. The economy, it's the economy stupid. Well, actually, it's not. It's the weather stupid. It's weather and climate stupid. But this actually takes on the other side. I mentioned it previously, financial trading as well. So the economy, look, let's make it absolutely clear. GDP, gross domestic product, yes, massively affected by COVID. Of course, we're seeing that in the absolute black and white of it. You couldn't get more obvious if you tried. But weather and climate is a good second behind this, because I can tell you the wrong type of season, when you get the wrong type of season, when you get an adverse season, for example, a very poor, very blizzard type, cold, detrimental winter where people can, it will affect GDP without a question by maybe 0.5%, maybe 1%, but it actually matters to the economies of the world. And it's by no accident that the strongest economies tend to be in temperate zones. If not in temperate zones, then in zones like China and the United States, where they've got climates of diverse climates, so that their diversification of products and service can help rather than be an hindrance. But those countries that suffer from detrimental climates, desert climates, if you like, they've got to rely on what comes out of the ground, and in some cases not a lot, then that's a difficulty for those economies. And it is one of the reasons why that temperate belt across the northern and southern hemisphere is why economies of various countries are more, have the ability, if you like, to sustain themselves and to progress and to lift themselves, simply because of the climate that they inhabit. That's basically the fundamental rule behind it. Financial trading, I do a bit. I won't show you what's on this particular phone. I do a bit. I probably could retire and do a lot. Why? because there's so many commodities. I mentioned the coffee and the cocoa and the wheat and all of that, and the orange juice, that meteorologists, and particularly if you're keyed in, again, you can take this to a trading firm if you like, where you can sit there and start pressing buttons as far as certain things. If you've got your fingers on the pulse, this is, you can see what's coming. You can see that the heating oil or natural gas are all going to be affected by the vagaries of the weather, not just climate, but weather changes. And that's so important as far as, because those commodity prices will react. The trading prices will move up and down commensurately with what the weather's doing. Not all the time. There's a horror story in that book that is quite a funny story in actual fact, where I thought I was, this is in my younger times, where I was trying to sort of play the trader, and it didn't work. And I'll explain the reason why. If you read the book, you'll see it is quite a funny old story. It wasn't at the time, but nonetheless, financial trading, and not just commodities, but stocks and shares as well. Absolutely, stocks and shares as well, because they're affected by the weather, by the seasons. If you're a beer company selling beer and that's all you do, and you get a ropey bad summer, probably arguably you can be selling the stock when the quarterly results come out. So that's the sort of thing you can get involved with quite easily, pressing buttons. And there's another aspect. I might mention this at the end, but I might as well mention it now, and that is climate change. It's changing things. It really is changing things. You saw a picture of Trump and Biden. It just so happens we're speaking on an inaugural day. It's a funny old day, this one. We could be, because in politics we're going to get a different type of reaction to climate change, and that will shift markets. It already has. Believe it. There's anticipation of this. So clean energy, for example, one area. EVs, electric vehicles, another area. If you look at the stock prices of these particular things, they've been moving upwards and upwards. And this will, under Biden, let's face it, most things come out of America and end up in Britain or Europe in some shape or form. That's the way it has been, probably the way it will stay. And climate change is part of this evolving new area where presents opportunities. It presents new business opportunities. So I don't want to go too far with that, because I should do, but I ain't got the time to do it. But there are many out there. So financial trading and economy, extremely important, as are to a lesser degree, but we all love our sport to one degree or another, or at least most of us do. And I've worked in Formula One, I've worked in rally. This company supplies to Bet365 for one, and others. We do the snow at Christmas to many of the bookmakers. So we help the bookmakers to put the points as far as weather is concerned. Weather impact in sport is a huge area. I go into it in the book about particularly football, soccer, in huge numbers, because we've crunched the numbers. We know what goes on a wet game or a windy game and what the expectation is. And the key thing here is edges. We find edges that perhaps layman people who gamble don't necessarily. So weather, I mean, cricket probably top of the pile, top of the shop as far as weather impact is concerned. It can make and break a result, simple as that. And it takes you away from that 50-50 situation when you say betting unders or overs on a rugby match, a rugby union, a rugby league match. Does it go over a certain point or under? Well, if the weather's really poor, strong winds and all the rest of it, yeah, the bookies will get a sniff of that to a degree. They put their points at 35 and it ends up at a 3-3 draw. Great, you've gone unders. You've won. You put your £100 on, or your pound, and you've won. You've doubled your money overnight, which is why this area is so important. I'm a little bit conscious of time, so I'm going to press on. But I will say to you now, there are 2 chapters in that book: sports per se and sports betting. And I learned a lot in my own life as a football coach, by the way, as an amateur football coach. I got to the FA grade 2, which was not bad, but I learned an awful lot and was able to play the game in actuality, play the weather game when the weather was out there. We could use that to our advantage, whether it be wind or low sun or whatever it happens to be. Going back to wellness and health, very important to athletes out there, how they're feeling, how their muscles will behave in certain types of weather and all the rest of it. So you can see how far, and I hope you're getting the idea of how deep this actually goes. Moving on again, that's a little, I think that's a pictorial of Game of Thrones. Sansa and, can't quite see the other one. Whoever it is anyway, but that's a film company and that's plastic snow. That's not real snow. But actually, the one thing I would say, this is filmmaking, and it's the film and arts and music and all the rest of it. You heard the song, the Seed by Aurora. You know what? This occupies, because the weather and climate are so huge in our lives. This occupies us so much where we don't even think about it anymore. You know, you look at a film, and you know what? For me, a film can be made or lost on the fact of the weather looking real or not real and taking us in. I think the Game of Thrones did an extremely good job of making you feel winter was coming. You actually felt it in your bones. The same with Lord of the Rings, and the same with many others. I list many of them in the book. Songs and poems and the ilk, the pictures and paintings. I can go on and on and on, but the weather and climate have been so huge in these areas. Now, as far as filmmaking is concerned, film advertising, this type of thing, they do, film companies, insurers, they employ us to not only forecast the weather, but they also employ us to verify the weather when they're insured for weather of one peril or another, you know, having a problem in terms of their filming on the day, because it costs thousands and thousands of pounds if everybody's there ready to shoot and the weather's the wrong type of weather. It's, you know, that's why they take out insurance. So I did one yesterday, which was in Brazil, and it was insured against 144 minutes of rain in any one period of the day. It's about a 9-hour stretch. It rained for 100 minutes. They didn't get their insurance claim. It stayed under, but they got obviously their film or their advertisement made. That's the type of area that we work in. So verifying in Great Britain for a place in Brazil, very fingers on, very much focused in terms of the day and how it was going and all the rest of it. But you can see filmmaking and advertising, this type of thing, extremely important as far as weather impact and is concerned. And it's a joy to work in some of these areas. And you occasionally go on to, or certainly I have, and been as an extra, watching the weather at the same time, but turned up, all disguised and what have you as an extra in these sort of advertisements and films. It's a bit of a joy. There we go. Moving on, I don't think any of us would dispute transport and travel and tourism as being pivotal as far as weather and climate is concerned. If you pick your holiday, you tend to go for A or B, the snowy mountains or a nice sunny beach or something of that nature, or a mountain where you can walk in the sunshine. We are governed by that. That's where we like to go. But the disruption caused by that. So, for example, we do work for certain logistics firms in the UK. Quite a few of them actually. You wouldn't have got your presents at Christmas time, maybe, if the weather had been X or Y, and we're telling these guys what to expect and where the perils are, because it's very difficult, how it is when it snows a lot, or the weather's windy, or there's too much rain, there's floods around. Their movements, logistics movements, become very, very difficult. So I don't think this one is one that would surprise you too much. Leaf on the line and all the rest of it. But again, it's an important area, and perhaps at times, and you drive your own car, if you drive your own car, your own vehicle, certain things, there's tips in the book that tell you, you should never drive with condensated windows or iced up windows. If you have an accident, we'll come to that in a second, but simply because it's extremely important as far as the law is concerned. But you'll know how, when you go down to your vehicle, what the weather does in the morning time, and or if you're involved in a stormy day, or you're driving in certain conditions on a motorway, that type of thing. It's in your face. It literally is in your face, so you've got to take care. And moving on a bit more, I think this is actually the insurance area. It's extremely important. We've worked for loss adjusted insurers since the beginning, to be honest with you, for 30 odd years, providing forecasts and verifying. And even today when I'm speaking, floods in the north potential anyway, and snow coming into Scotland, and high winds and all the rest of it. It's a peril that is ongoing, tied in very much with climate change. Scooting across to energy. Old energy, new energy. This is old energy to a certain degree, pollution and all the rest of it. Not sure that, I think that's probably steam that's coming out of that rather than smoke, but you see where I'm going with this. New energy, by the way, new energy, green energy is a massive business opportunity, guys. You should not miss it. Look, I'm not an expert in this particular area per se, but I am an expert in saying this is coming. It's coming right in front of your face. I mentioned the political side of things and the changes that are going to occur because of climate change and all the rest of it. This is huge. But when you switch on your light, when you turn on your heater, you turn up your thermostat or down, or you put your air conditioner on, this is everything to do with how you're feeling. It's everything to do with what the weather's doing. It's as simple as that. We're driven by it. Opportunities are there for you into the future. This one is it's a courthouse in America. It could be a courthouse in the UK or in Europe, wherever you're sitting at this moment in time. Legal weather is extremely interesting area which I've got into. I write reports, I do site visits. Why? I mentioned the car thing, you know, maybe having an accident in your car. Well, if you have an accident in your car and you condensated windows or frozen up windows, you're in trouble. If you've knocked somebody down and you sadly kill somebody, you're in big trouble, simply because the police will take your car apart. They will take your vehicle apart, and you know, photographs and all the rest of it will prove you didn't take due care and attention, and then that suddenly you're into a really serious case of dangerous driving, manslaughter, and all the rest of it. And I can say absolutely, I've been to court many times on both sides of the fence, giving the weather and climate story, as far as weather more than climate, but certainly as far as accidents, incidents of all natures. It's not just slipping on ice. It's not just somebody claiming, you know, one of those things. There's a lot of that, but believe it or not, I've done murder, manslaughter. Probably think he's a murder. How does weather? Well, decomposition of body, timing of it, etc. So Miss Marple, I can be, if you wish me to be. But it's a fascinating area. Another fascinating area: wars and battles. I won't go into this too much. I hope you don't get involved in them so much, but I mentioned my time in the Navy. Yeah, believe it or not, a missile won't go straight, if you like, when it's aimed, if the weather is wrong. Even the smart missiles miss simply because of the wind, vectors, etc. So meteorology, ballistic meteorology, is what I did when I was in the Navy to a certain degree. The helicopters are on board ships. Wars and battles, there's many of them that have been won, lost. We might have been speaking different languages, have a different politics to be at a different time now, if you like, than we would have if the wind had been blowing in a different direction. So in the book, I go into some of those instances, and it's extremely important as far as winning and losing wars and battles are concerned. So I don't want to underestimate that, but you're business people, so I ain't going to go too far into that at this moment in time. This is just really construction, road mending, that type of thing. You're not going to do this, what you're seeing on the screen, you're not going to do this on a rainy day. It's as simple as that. So again, it's expense, it's time, it's planning, it's capturing the moment, it's feeling the pulse, it's making sure you're doing the right thing at the right time in construction and what have you. What you build is extremely important. Now a lot of these buildings that go up have obviously got to meet climate requirements, etc. So again, it's an area, perhaps it's a bit of an old one, this, but nonetheless it's still relevant as far as going forward, as far as business is concerned, that construction and this type of event is part of it. Now this is a big one for me. I'm recognizing we ain't got much time left. I'm looking at the clock. I'm saying to myself, I don't want to lose this one. This is you, it's me. Learning, education is how it's said in the book. We don't do enough of it. When I go to school, and my son, when I went to see in his geography class what he was learning the same thing as I was 20 or 30, 40 years, 50 years ago. And I'm thinking, it should have changed. This now, what I'm giving you a little bit of should be part of the equation, not just warm fronts, warm fronts, cold fronts, lows, highs, you know, hurricanes. We need to know more about how the weather affects us, business side of things, climate change, all of that. Yeah, climate change is being accelerated a little bit. That's great, but you know what? It starts at this age, what you're seeing on the screen, and it goes right up to where you are now. I'm so glad that you joined this, because it's part of the learning equation, if you like. And as I said at the beginning, I learn and learn every single day. It's so surprising how much you learn, because the weather is so not just in your face, but it's hidden as well, and you learn things behind every cloud. So it's important that Education is a huge part of this. I'd like to change the curriculum in the UK. That's going to be a hard one. Certainly as far as the world is concerned, I think the United States is probably ahead of most. Maybe there are other countries that you know better than I, what you've learned and where you've learned it. This is all to do with climate change. Look, if there isn't going to be a subject that hasn't already been in your face to a certain degree, but has been nullified by, and I'll make this absolutely clear, by climate change deniers. I mentioned already, we're losing the #1 climate denier today. Good is what I say. I'm not going to mince my words. We need fresh faces who recognize the science behind all of this. Don't ignore the science, okay? Not in this and not in COVID. The fact remains is that this is going on. Our world is changing. From a business aspect, it does bring opportunities. I mentioned some of them before to you. So grasp it, learn about it, learn more than me, because I'm going to be too late in life. But I hope certainly within the book I do offer certain remedies that you can do on a personal basis. But you know where it starts? I'll tell you where it starts. It starts with people who can shift things. That's politicians, and it starts with your vote. Okay, so in my mind, don't vote for climate change deniers. Simple as that. And I'm quite happy to stand on a box with a big loudspeaker and say that, because that's why we are where we are. We've all hidden our faces, and including me to a certain degree. I'm a certain hypocrite as far as this is concerned. I've known it for 30 odd years. I've done probably little about it. I've carried on doing the wrong things. It's the way it goes. I'm learning, as I said. So that's another climate change area as well. So you can feel the importance of this particular subject. And that brings me, I recognize the time is ticking. That's the final screen that you're going to see. I think Paul will probably come back and make his face available to you, and then it's a bit of Q&A. So I hope you enjoyed that. I wish there was more time. There isn't.
Excellent, thank you, Jim. Fantastic webinar. Super interesting to hear all the impacts of weather and climate to all industries. We've had a lot of questions come in, which are amazing questions. So just before we head over to those, I'd just like to let everyone know that keep the questions coming in. Hopefully we have enough time to answer them all. If we run out of time, don't worry, those get passed over to Jim and he'll be in touch following the webinar. So we'll go to the first question. So it's about predicting weather. So the question is it possible to predict with sufficient accuracy? I realize we can forecast a few days ahead or on a scale of years, i.e. climate change, but what about the in-between?
Yeah, it's a good question. The in-between, you're probably looking beyond a week and maybe a month. We do actually put out seasonal forecasts and we put out monthly forecasts. They are a best guesstimate, and I wouldn't put it anything more than that. We do look at various models. So the models do go beyond the 7th day. They're not always accurate, but they're better than pure guessing, if you like. I'll tell you something else as well. Good weather forecasters, good meteorologists, they have it in their bones as well. You feel it in your gut what's going to happen next. I've got a little bit of that. I'll say that openly to you. You can often say, when you stood there in a drought situation, you say, I can feel the rain coming, not yet, but in a month's time it's going to be big and we're going to start to get flood. Some of that is there. But that short answer to the question is we're getting better. It's coming, and if you've got your fingers on your pulse, you can probably stretch those fingers a little bit more than would have been the case only 10 years ago.
Fantastic, excellent. So just another question. They're asking, how does climate change influence the real estate industry?
Real estate being well, let me say this, is being houses and where they're putting it, and businesses and all the rest of it. Well, look, it's an old adage. I hate to say this, but this is a bit of learning. I mentioned construction, but building houses on floodplains is not the thing to do, even though I'm seeing it in front of me sometimes. Building houses in susceptible climate change sort of perishable areas, if you like, where climate will be a problem, is not the thing to do. So real estate, I think there, how can I put this? There's always been a sort of advantage in real estate being in the right place. Certain climates, that the house prices are high simply because the climate is an extremely one that we like. But we know from the forest fires in California, for example, or Greece, that these sort of events, sometimes you can build think you're in the right place, you're in the wrong place. So you have to be observant about where climate change is taking place and what the ramifications of that are. So it's likely that real estate, if you find yourself with a real estate in a certain position that becomes climate at the mercy of climate change, it's only going one direction. So this is shifting sands, if you like. I think there'll be places that you're going to feel more secure than not. So I live in I wouldn't say it's a high place, but it's at least higher than most places. I'm a few hundred feet higher than would be, say, other places that would be prone to flood. So pick your place, your own building, if you like, your own house, your own area, advisedly going forward, because these changes in terms of climate change are going to happen and are happening very rapidly, as we've seen in various cases. So not on beaches, not on lakes, perhaps. Think about it in a logical, common sense point of view.
Amazing, excellent. So we'll go to the next question. So in terms of planning a business strategy, can you share some examples of how weather impacts or affects decision making?
Yeah, all the way down the line, to be honest with you, this is such a big question. Look, it depends what you're selling, the product or service, and what you're selling. First and foremost, you've got to know how sensitive that product or service is to the weather. Is it right at the very top? You're selling ice creams or ice cubes or something of that nature, or the opposite, or is it somewhere in between, or is it somewhere at the bottom? So you've got to recognize your product or service and where that fits in with both climate change and the weather of the week or the day or wherever it happens to be. Once you've recognized that, and if you've got multi products and services, then you've got to attribute them, measure it. I would say that's your first thing. Measure it, look at the data, find out how much this is, or at least give yourself a good guess. And then, and as I've already said, you've got to keep your fingers on the pulse. You're looking around, you're looking for best advantage, you're looking for the best types of forecasts that are out there, not just your app. Make that absolutely clear. It's a lazy man's way of doing that, looking at an app and saying that's it. That's not it. Believe me, it's not. It's why we get calls from farmers and such like and groundsmen in the UK, because they don't rely on apps. They need a little bit more than that. And then start pressing buttons. Be fast, be nimble, get your dancing shoes on, and be that progressive person that can accelerate the sales and market it in a way, I've talked about that will enhance your product or service, commensurate with what's going on out there with the weather.
Perfect, excellent. So we've got loads of questions coming in now. So we'll go to the next one. It's addressing climate change. So they're asking, who do you think is responsible for elevating and addressing climate change? Are governments doing enough, or do we need more from businesses to take action?
Yeah, you know what? We'll go one step further this way and say it's you personally, everybody. I call myself a hypocrite because I've lived 30, 40 years knowing climate change was on its way and all the rest of it and the ramifications of that, and still did the same things, driving a diesel car and eating meat like there's no tomorrow and all the rest of it. So it starts with you. And you know what? It starts with small steps, little steps that you might. I won't go into them because there isn't time, but if you get the book, they're in there. Okay, I do offer solutions, your own personal solutions, and then it does go into business. Good businesses promote themselves as climate aware. They will take steps. They will take steps on a personal and on a commercial business basis that will help. So surrounding yourself with plants and trees and all of that sort of stuff that you can do. Don't just mean go out and stick a seed, stick a sapling in the ground. You've got to do that on a managed basis. It's much better. But surround yourself. Feel good factor. Start there. Make yourself feel better. It does start there. Then it goes into business. Then it goes into government. Governments are, by their very nature, governed by the politicians that inhabit those places. We all know what's been happening in America. Yet to see. Look, I pause and pray and hope that we get some action in the UK. I doubt it somehow. I really do. Sadly, where we are at this moment in time with the government that we've got, You only have to look to COVID to know that that is the case, but we'll see. There's space and time there yet. But other governments throughout the world, I'm sure, will do their little bit. This will become the biggest subject once COVID is over. Make it absolutely clear, climate change will be right at the very top, and it involves everybody, and not just climate, but the environment per se.
Fantastic, excellent. So we've got time, I think, for 2 more questions. So the first question will be, what impact do you believe the environment will have on the future of business in the coming decade?
It's a sister question, to be honest with you. The environment isn't just the climate, it's everybody. You know, you walk out your door and there's litter everywhere, or it's that kind of thing. So look, there will be, make this absolutely clear, businesses will grow from seed at this point, and have grown, but will continue to grow from seed, looking after more about what mankind has done to this environment. And by the environment, I mean wildlife, etc., etc., everything that's around us. We've been spoilers this last 30, 40 years, make it absolutely clear. And we're only at the start of redressing that. So businesses are going to come out of nothing, if you like, from that seed, and they're going to make a massive difference. I use the word technology because a lot of it will be technology based. Look for those if you want to trade your stocks and shares and what have you. Look for those, one direction and one direction only if you pick the right ones. Okay, it needs those type of flair, innovative people, front-footed, to get that sort of moving. So the environment per se, right across the board, and business, I can't think of a better direction of travel than this. You guys, if you're going in this direction, you're going in the right direction. This is the future, believe me.
Excellent, fantastic. So yeah, just I think we've got 2 quick questions we can ask. So do you have any examples of organizations or individuals that are really taking steps to address climate change?
Individuals is always well, I like to think I am, even if I'm only on here speaking to everybody that's out there, that I'm sending a message. The book does, to a large degree. Please, if you're out there and you can get hold of this book, it's on Amazon and all these other places. It's actually discounted now, so you can actually pick it up quite cheap. It will help. I hope it helps. I hope it steers you to a certain degree. Individuals, it's, as I say, it starts with politicians. Let's see what Biden's got to say in his inaugural speech, and therefore afterwards. And those are the politicians that are at the forefront, if you like. And there are certain politicians throughout the world that are advocates of climate change remedies and all the rest of it. So look there. There are business leaders throughout, without mentioning anybody specific, because there are so many of them, and it's growing. And what we've got to do is we've got to suffocate and put out of business those people who've denied it for so long. Denied it, you know why? Not just because of climate change, but it actually gives us a better life. It's a better environment. So even if it's climate change is a total dud at the end of the day, which it isn't, but let's just say it was, it's all better for us. It's all just creates better for life for you and your children going forward.
Excellent, fantastic. Unfortunately, we seem to be out of time, but all the unanswered questions, I'll send them over to you following the webinar, Jim, and you'll be able to get in touch with everyone.
That's absolutely fine.
So some fantastic questions there. So just lastly, thank you again for an excellent session. It was really insightful to hear all the impacts of weather. Just before we go, our next webinar is the business of getting business, why organizations must go digital and how to do so. That's with Joe Manusa, and that's taking place on the 18th of February at 12 p.m. GMT. So if you'd like to register, please head over to our website to register for that webinar or any of the other webinars we have scheduled. Also, we've had a lot of questions around the recording of this session. Don't worry, the session is being recorded. We'll send the recording to you all a week from today, so you'll get an email from Amber and BJ with the link to access the recording. So that'll be with you in the next week. So just lastly, before we head off, thank you again, Jim, for a fantastic webinar.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And we look
thanks, everybody. Thanks for looking in.
Another webinar. Excellent. Thank you. Take care.